Alright, I finally decided to make a video to cover Blender. Now, I could make a whole YouTube channel just for videos for Blender, like, tutorials and educational stuff. But in this video, I just want to give a very bare bones intro because there's a lot of people who are just now discovering Blender. I've been ranting and raving about it for years, but Blender has been getting a lot of attention in the CGI software world, and rightfully so, because it's a very powerful piece of standalone software that you can do a lot of different things with. So I'm going to show you basically the user interface and kind of explain what it is and what I use it for. So first of all, Blender is a freeware open source program. That means there is no money involved in getting the program, installing it, using it. There's no monthly charge, no upgrade fee, nothing like that. It's totally free. It's made by a very talented group of programmers, and it is constantly being updated and fixed and improved. About once or twice a year, there's major updates. About a month or two ago, we just got a really big update to 2.80, and I'm loving it. So blender.org is the official website for Blender where you can download the program and learn more about it. There's a lot of interesting news articles about who's using the program and cool stuff that big companies and developers have been doing with the program. There's also a really great forum called blenderartist.org where there's a ton of different categories to discuss. You can learn, you can ask questions, you can post your work and to get critique or really get inspired by a lot of the other artwork on there. And on Facebook, there's also a really large Facebook group called Blender Artists. There's almost 50,000 users in here of all different levels. There's amazing professionals and there's complete noobs who don't really know anything, which you may be in that group, and that's okay. So I encourage you to join this group, browse it about every day just to get some inspiration. You can also learn from the different various posts and other questions that people are asking. Of course, search for questions before you post your own because it may have already been answered before. I myself also post my work and my questions to that group, and I've learned a lot from it. And lastly, blendermarket.com is a website where you can buy add-ons. You can also buy models. You can buy materials, scripts, render setups, and all kinds of interesting stuff to improve your Blender experience and your work. There's a lot of add-ons that are really relatively cheap. I mean, there's over here, this plugin is really cool. It costs $1. There's also plugins that cost around $20, and I'm assuming there's some around $100, but not a whole lot of them. Most add-ons cost anywhere from $5 to $25, and that is incredible considering that most big-name computer graphic programs, their add-ons are $200 to $1,000 each. So definitely check out Blender Market if you're interested in improving what you can do and buy some really cool add-ons or models to play around with. Alright, so let's get to Blender. When you first open it up, at least in my version, which is 2.80, this is what it currently looks like. I've got a list of my recent projects that I've made, and if you click anywhere, the little splash screen here is going to go away. And we've got this really crazy 3D grid. If you hold Alt and click and drag, you can actually move around in 3D space. Or if you see this, what's called the 3D gizmo, if you click and drag it, you can also move and look around in 3D space. If you click on the hand, you can pan up, down, left, and right. If you click on the camera, it'll go into your camera view, which we see this funny looking thing over here is actually a digital simulated camera, which is used for rendering. And if you click on this grid, it turns from isometric, which is completely flat. There's no third dimension really. There's no perspective. Or if you click on it and turn it off, it goes back to normal perspective 3D. So this is called the 3D viewport. And the way that the user interface works is it's completely customizable. If you put your mouse in the middle of two sections, you see the cursor change. You can, of course, expand or collapse different panels that way. And within the 3D viewport, if you press N, it'll get rid of that side panel, and T will get rid of the tools. I can also drag this dividing line up here, and I can maybe have two different 3D viewpoints from different perspectives. Or if you click on the icon on the very top left of any area space, you can choose to view different modules within Blender. So I can have an image viewer here, and I can look at my textures. Over here I can choose to have my animation grid for my timeline. And then down here I've got my different settings for rendering and materials and all that stuff. But I'm going to keep this as my outliner, which shows all your objects and the hierarchy. And I'm going to put this bottom square as my graph, which is basically your timeline, and it's used for animating and keyframing stuff. But I don't need it that big, so I'm going to slide it down. There we go, out of my way. So I've used Blender to create all kinds of cool stuff, such as backgrounds for my photos. I've made props. I've made animations that have been used in video files. I've made spaceships. I've made weapons, swords, lightsabers, guns. planet scenes, all kinds of really cool stuff that half of them are just for fun to see if I can do it. The other half are actually used in my composite photos or just for layers for special effects in some of my pictures that I've done. So being able to make custom items for a photo shoot that no one else in the world has, because I'm making this from scratch, is a really amazing asset that not a lot of other photographers can claim. You can buy packs of images and backgrounds and skies, or try to find a picture on Google Images and you can steal it from there. Hope you don't get sued, and hopefully it also fits into your photo. That's not the way that I wanted to go about things. So being able to create things custom from scratch that I literally have the copyright to because I made it myself is very, very beneficial to me. So let me just show you a real quick basic intro to editing. So 3D objects are generally classified as a mesh. So if I press Shift A, I get my add menu up. There's a lot of things I can add. Let's go to the mesh menu and choose cube. Now when you open Blender, you probably already had a cube in the middle. I've deleted it because I don't normally use it, but here I am, I had to add it back for this example. So if you right click on an object, it will become orangey yellow. That means it's currently selected. You can right click on your cube, right click on this light, and if you hit G, you can move an object around in 3D space. If I want to move it in a different direction, maybe I'll change my angle, hit G and move it over here, over here. That's the grab or move tool. You can rotate things by clicking R, which kind of rotates it in a circle from your point of view. If you double tap it, you can move kind of in a different sort of 3D way. And if you press R and then a specific axis, X, Y, or Z, you can move it along that axis. So you have a lot of control. Sure, there's a lot of buttons to press, but you know what? This is a very powerful program, so you have to tell it what exactly you want because it can't read your mind yet. Now I've right-clicked on my cube. If I double press R, I can rotate it in some very interesting ways in 3D space, or I can rotate it on the X-axis, press Y on the Y-axis, press Z on the Z-axis. So I've got this cube here, I've got this light. I'm going to make a ground by doing Shift-A, Mesh, and Plane. Now here's another button to press, is the S button for scale. If I press it and I begin to move my mouse, I can scale any object or any mesh up or down as I want. I'm going to do it again to make it even bigger. Now I'm going to move the cube up because I don't want it cut in half. I want it to be on top of this ground that I've created. So I'm going to press G for move and then Z because that's the up and down axis. I'm going to move it right there. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so again, holding Alt, I can click and drag and look around, or you can click in your 3D gizmo over here and zoom around. Okay, so now if I press 0, or if I press on this camera button up here, it's going to switch my 3D view to where the camera is. And now this camera is a little bit low, so I'm going to right click on the border of the camera, make sure the border is kind of orange, and click G and move it up. There we go, nice and centered. Now I'm going to render this and see what this is going to look like. And I just need to press F12 to do that. And here it goes, it's calculating all of the light rays, all of the shadows, samples, and all kinds of crazy 3D stuff that computers do so well. Now depending on how large you render this photo as, or how many samples, which is the quality of light, or how complex your scene is, it's going to change the speed at which it takes to render your scene. If you have a very simple scene with no shadows or lights, it could render in just a second or two. But if you have a very complicated photorealistic scene with lots of complicated stuff in it, it could take hours for one single frame. That's right. Now as we can see, it's very bright. So I'm going to right click on this light, which is this funny looking ray shooting down here, and I'm going to turn this strength down to 2. If you don't see that, it should be on your right. Look for the little light bulb tab. There's a bunch of different tabs over here. Click on the light bulb tab. I'm going to turn that down to 2. Now I'm going to render it again and see if it looks any better. Yeah, it's a little darker. So the way that 3D graphics generally works is the computer is calculating mathematically the rays of light, where they're hitting, and what you should be seeing based on those light rays. And that's how it generates a two-dimensional image from a 3D scene. Now the resulting render is just a flat image. I can go to Image and Save As, and makes this into a JPEG or a PNG or any kind of file that it offers here, and I can save that to my hard drive. Okay, let me explain mesh editing or modeling. I'm just going to right click on my cube and I'm going to get out of the camera view. So I'm going to click on the camera button up here. It's going to take me back to this kind of third person view. I can look around if I want. So my cube is selected. As we can see, it's orange. And if I hit tab on my keyboard, it's going to go into edit mode. We can see on the top left up here it says edit mode. And we've got these 3 funny looking icons. There's a little dot, there's a line, and there's a of a cube or a flat square on the cube. So what this refers to is vertex, which are these little dots on the corners. Let me zoom in with my plus button. Then I'm going to move up by holding Shift and Alt and click and dragging, or you can use the hand to kind of pan up and down. Oh, and here's a zoom as well. If you click and drag on the magnifier, you can zoom in and out, you can move, and of course you can rotate. All right, so every mesh is made up of three things, but basically one thing, vertex. A vertex is a little tiny dot, which is the intersecting point of two edges. So an edge, if you click on the next button, Edge Select, now we can right-click on the individual lines. And watch this, if I click on a line or an edge and hit G, I can move it around. I can do whatever I want. I can rotate it, do kind of weird stuff. If I right-click again, it'll go away. Or if you hit Escape, it'll go back to normal. And the third option is a face. So a cube has 6 faces, right? Some people say 6 sides, but technically in this context of 3D editing, it has 6 flat faces. So a face, just like the other things, I can move them, I can rotate them, and I can scale them to make all kinds of interesting shapes. So when someone creates a 3D mesh, say a hand or a gun or a spaceship, what they're doing is they're at the base level, most people are actually editing the mesh itself by modifying it, by adding portions, by extruding, by beveling, and of course you can cut shapes out of it to make it more complicated. You can use inset, which is I. You can extrude it up or down by using the E key. And as you can see, I'm already making some kind of interesting shape. Maybe this is a futuristic building. Later down the road, I'll be adding windows and doors and maybe some cars and streets on the ground. It's really pretty much limited to how creative you are, how much time you have, and eventually how powerful your computer is. Those are the three things that limit you in creating 3D stuff, is your creativity, your time, and your computer. Now, if I press T to get my tools back, I can click on the Move tool, and that puts this little overlay of arrows over any object I click on. See, the light has the arrows, the cube has an arrows, and I can just kind of slide this out of the way. And Blender has a number of other meshes you can create, such as a sphere. You can, of course, change the quality or resolution of the sphere. I'm going to click Delete. Shift A to add. You can make a cylinder. And if you expand this little panel down here, you can change the size, the radius of it, the height, and how many vertices go around the circle. If you have a whole bunch of vertices, it looks completely smooth. If you only have a few, it's essentially a triangle or an octagon or whatever you do with 8 sides. You can make an icosphere, which is a sphere made out of triangles. Lots of fun stuff you can do with that, such as this. And there I go. Now, I've been doing this for quite a few years, so I know a lot of keyboard shortcuts, which you can learn in time for editing, for modeling your shapes, for getting around on the user interface, and for switching views very easily. And that's just learned with practice. I encourage you, if you want to learn, look up on YouTube. There's a bunch of really great channels that teach various aspects of Blender, such as texturing, lighting, modeling, animation, all the different aspects that Blender can do. You can learn online for free, and it is so much fun. If you have the time and if you have the need for Blender, I definitely encourage you to take up learning it now to get ahead of the curve, because a lot of professionals that use the big dollar programs that cost thousands of dollars even per month, that work for movie studios and ad agencies and things like that, they're actually switching from their big commercial programs over to Blender, which is free, because Blender is so simple, it's well supported, and it's very powerful. So there you have it. I hope this was an effective intro to Blender. If you have questions, please ask. And I may be making some more advanced videos to cover various things like further modeling techniques, texturing, lighting, animation, things like that. If I have time and if there's enough requests, I may make some more videos about Blender. Well, thanks for watching and stay tuned for more great videos. Bye.